Imagine walking into your childhood home, the scent of old wood and worn carpet stirring a vague familiarity. But something feels off. The living room looks exactly as you remember it, yet there's a mirror image of it, a second version, as if reality itself had duplicated overnight. You turn and the hallway behind you is both empty and crowded at the same time. Your mind screams that you've been here before, twice. You might blink, rub your eyes, or take a deep breath thinking it's a trick of memory or fatigue, but the feeling persists. Every corner seems familiar, yet slightly wrong. The sofa is in the right place, yet somehow in two places at once. The air hums with uncanny repetition, a subtle vibration in the bones that says, this is not normal. Now ask yourself, if your own brain convinced you that the world had been duplicated, that reality itself was repeating, would you trust your senses? Or would you start questioning everything? Could you still walk through the world confidently? Or would each step feel like walking through a hall of mirrors, never certain which reflection is real? This isn't a hallucination from a fever dream. It's a rare neurological condition called Reduplicative Paramnesia. People afflicted genuinely believe that places, objects, even entire cities have been copied, sometimes existing in multiple locations simultaneously. They don't just imagine it, they know it to be true, and nothing you say can convince them otherwise. But why does the human mind fracture in such a precise, disturbing way? Why do some brains insist that reality itself has doubled? Tonight, we unravel the eerie psychology behind the illusion of repetition, where memory, perception, and identity collide. This is a story that touches the very foundation of what we call reality. Segment 1: The Disturbing History. The first documented accounts of reduplicative paramnesia appear in early 20th century psychiatric literature. Soldiers returning from World War I were often described as living in a mirrored world, claiming hospitals, barracks, and even entire towns had been duplicated. One of the most cited early cases involves a man known only as GR, a patient of the renowned neurologist Dr. Arnold Pick. GR suffered a severe head injury and afterward insisted that the hospital where he was being treated was not one, but two hospitals occupying the same space. According to him, the real hospital was far away, in a city he could not name, and the doctors he interacted with were mere copies of their originals. Doctors were baffled. This was not a simple delusion or a symptom of dementia. GR's conviction was unwavering. Reduplicative paramnesia appeared to fuse memory and perception into a looping, self-reinforcing error, a glitch in the architecture of reality itself. By the mid-20th century, researchers were cataloging dozens of similar cases, often following strokes, brain trauma, or degenerative diseases. Patients weren't merely confused, they were absolutely convinced of the reality of a duplicated world. In some instances, their insistence escalated into distress, social withdrawal, or even hostility toward caregivers, whom they accused of living in fake spaces. The accounts read like science fiction. Imagine walking into a room and being certain that the room existed simultaneously in another city, that your surroundings were not unique but mirrored, and yet tangible. This isn't imagination. For the brain of someone with reduplicative paramnesia, it is fact. Segment 2: The Science Behind the Split. To understand why this happens, we need to peer inside the brain's most delicate wiring. Reduplicative paramnesia is closely linked to damage in the right hemisphere, especially the frontal and parietal lobes. These regions are responsible for spatial awareness, memory integration, and the sense of self in relation to the environment. Neuroscientist Dr. Michael Koppelman explains that patients experience a unique reality mismatch. 1. Memory fragments persist. Episodic memory retains fragments of locations from past experiences. 2. Visual spatial misalignment. The brain's visual spatial processing network misaligns these memories with the current environment. Pericary truth-checking fails. The frontal lobes, which normally suppress errors or contradictory beliefs, fail to do so. The result? A patient sees a hospital or a familiar street or home, but part of their brain insists it is the same hospital they visited last year, or that it exists simultaneously somewhere else. It is not imagination or whimsy. It is a neurological reality, convincing and persistent, trapping the mind in a loop of duplication. Interestingly, reduplicative paramnesia shares mechanisms with other neurological oddities. Patients often display confabulation, fabricating memories to fill gaps, and anosognosia, a lack of insight into one's own deficits. In essence, the mind protects itself from uncertainty by creating a mirrored world, a psychological safety net that paradoxically becomes a prison. Think of it this way: the brain, faced with ambiguity or injury, refuses to admit "I don't know." Instead, it doubles reality, providing a consistent but false truth. The outcome is eerily logical, yet fundamentally impossible. Segment 3. Famous real-world case study. One of the most striking modern cases occurred at Walsgrave Hospital in England. A patient recovering from a stroke was admitted for rehabilitation. She entered the hospital cafeteria and froze, insisting, "This isn't Walsgrave. It's the same hospital, just copied somewhere else." Her family was stunned. She could recount every detail of the hospital's layout and every staff member, yet she refused to believe she was physically present there. Even more astonishingly, when taken to another wing of the hospital, she claimed the duplicate existed there as well. The medical team, documenting her behavior, found that her conviction never wavered, despite photographic evidence, repeated explanations, and logical reassurances. This case illustrates a profound truth. Reduplicative paramnesia is not a lie, whimsy, or momentary lapse. It is a deep neurological compulsion, one that forces the patient to live in overlapping realities. It also raises a haunting question. If our brains can duplicate the world so convincingly, how fragile is our own grasp on reality? How often might we mistake memory, expectation, or perception for objective truth? The twist in application? Here's where it gets personal. You might not have a neurological injury or reduplicative paramnesia, but your brain still loves tricks. Every day, subtle loops of perception and memory shape your reality. That eerie sense of déjà vu, when a place or event feels strangely familiar, is your mind briefly merging past and present. The feeling that a song, a conversation, or a street has been experienced before may be a miniature echo of the same brain networks gone awry in reduplicative paramnesia. Even something as mundane as misplacing your keys triggers your frontal lobes to fabricate explanations, constructing tiny reduplicated realities in your mind. In other words, the same mechanisms that fracture reality in pathological cases exist quietly in all of us. Your mind is a master illusionist, capable of overlaying memory and perception so seamlessly that reality itself can feel doubled. It's a humbling, even unnerving thought. The world you think is solid, unique, and linear might be far more malleable than you imagine. Our brains are constantly predicting, filling gaps, and sometimes creating mirrored truths just to make sense of a chaotic environment. Reduplicative paramnesia forces us to confront a terrifying truth. Our perception of the world is never pure. It is filtered, reconstructed, and sometimes duplicated by the brain's own design. Today, we looked at how trauma, stroke, and neural damage can shatter reality. But tomorrow, what if I told you that even without injury, our minds can manipulate time, space, and memory, making the impossible feel unmistakably real? Reality, it seems, is not a static thing, but a cooperative act between your senses and your memory. It can be seamless and trustworthy, or doubled, fractured, and uncanny. Every day, we live in a world reconstructed by our brains, where perception, expectation, and memory collide to create a tapestry that is ours alone. Reduplicative paramnesia is a window into the fragility of this system. It is a reminder that certainty is rarely absolute, that the brain's insistence on coherence can lead to truths that are convincing but false, and perhaps most unsettling of all, the same machinery that allows us to survive and navigate reality can, in rare cases, convince us that the world is duplicated, mirrored, and impossible to untangle.